Remember from our talk on culture, we want to empower people. We don't want to enable them.
And we don't want them to feel like they are entitled to something.
Yeah. So in our cases with cars too, our kids knew if they got in a wreck and insurance costs went up, they had to pay those costs. If they got in a wreck, they had to pay the deductible, which was usually $750 before they could start driving again. Mm-hmm. So again, what are we trying to teach our kids? And remember, our actions will speak a lot louder than our words. And then teach them they won't always get what they want. Teach them to give. At the end of every year, we would sit down in the bishops in tithing settlement, and the kids would have their tithing. They'd have their spreadsheet there, and they'd say, "Well, how much would you like to? So this is your tithing. You have X amount of dollars you save for tithing. What would you like to give for fast offerings? And what would you like to give for missionary?" And it's interesting that the children that would give the most are the ones that were the best with money. So it was just kind of an interesting observation. But make sure they don't get too much of inappropriate things. And then help them realize that you don't always get what you want. As you come here, we're teaching to the choir because you guys are here. But make sure you get a good education. Make sure you're spending the necessary time in your classes so you learn the skills that you need, because it can make such a different thing. So this is another one. Let me do this one at a time. So is education a good investment? This was from 2012, but it said if you're not a high school graduate, your median earnings was about $24,000 a year. Over 40 years, you would have about almost $1 million. Notice, if you have a high school diploma, that goes up to $1.3 million over your lifetime. Some college, no degree, you're up to about $1.55 million. How about an associate's degree? $1.727, and these are US. Bachelor's degree, you're up to about 2.3. Master's, 2.7. Doctoral degree, 3.2. And professional degree. What do you notice here? Generally, as our education increases, our ability to earn money more increases as well. So the Lord has given us a mandate to get as much education as we can. Is a mission a good investment? I can tell you that it's probably the second most important decision that I made in my life was serving a mission. The first most important was deciding to marry Anne, March 17th, 1984. And if I hadn't have served a mission, I'm not sure she would have wanted to marry me. So all of these things are intertwined. So we felt it's really important. We know it's really important. Principles for education missions, very similar to the ones we've talked about. And then what are we doing there? We can move on.
Thanks, Celestial. Okay.
So question is, how do you save for education? Now, many of you are from different countries, and so we're not going to talk about things like 529 plans and education IRAs, but they're on this sheet of paper. As grandparents, what do we now? What interesting research has shown that children who have money saved for their education and missions are much more likely to get their educations and missions. So what have we done as grandparents? So we've started setting money aside for our kids as soon as they're grandkids, as soon as they're born, to help them to start saving and start saving earlier than later. So we like things like, so here's education savings with tax benefits, Series EEI. We talked about if you have I-bonds, if you use them for tuition, they're already state tax-free, they become federal tax-free as well. My favorite thing right now is a 529 savings plan. It's like a Roth IRA. You put the money in after tax, and when you take it out for education, you don't have to pay any taxes.
But that's only for Utah.
And then, no, it's for every state. But Utah has a special thing too, that if you put money on this, they give you a 4.55% tax credit.
Oh.
Okay. So we put money in for our grandkids and we get a little bit of a tax credit. It's free money on our things there too. And then there's education IRA, which is very again similar to the Roth too. if you have questions on that, if you do the skills development problem, there's actually a problem there that explains
Let me
Utah's
ask somebody else.
program there.
I'll give it to you.
Education and mission, how do you do it without, if there's no tax benefits? Just wise investing. Kind of the same things that we've talked about in class. So just encourage you, take a look at this. There's a lot of information on these sheets. I would put it in the back of your family section too. But even each of you need to create your mission and education plans for your kids. Some of you said, I have no kids right now. But at least humor us and put this together. What would it be?
For later.
For later. Even if you choose not to help, if you have kids, you at least have the responsibility to let them know that you're not going to help. But there are reasons to not help. So if you choose not to help, I believe in your ability to support yourself without our help. We won't likely happen to fund, so we're choosing not to contribute financially. How about goals? Hey, we think this is a good goal, but it'll mean more to you if you do it yourself. Plans allow you to save for these goals. We'll give you opportunities to earn and to save money. So if you choose not to help, at least have a plan. And then if you choose to help, what are you going to do? So this is on help with missions. We just think it was an important goal.
So these are ideas that you can use on your plan.
So with our kids, they saved up for their missions, but what we did is we paid for their missions, and then when they got back, they still had the money that they were planning to spend, so they could use it for education and things like that.
We were nice.
Plans and strategies. What we did is, again, we talked about 20%. We used 15% for retirement, and usually 2% we used saving for our kids' missions and education. And then if you choose to help with education, what we did in our case is we said, hey, if you'll earn $1, we'll match it. And we just used a multiple.
So we encourage them to earn money, because if we just gave it to them, then it wouldn't really, they wouldn't value it as much. So we didn't just give them the education, but we did match it, and we had a good match for it. So they had to save some.
We had one daughter who came in, she said, and it was late October, early November, she says, Dad, I haven't saved my match for next year. And we just said, you know what, that's too bad. We'll be sad that you're not going to school. And she said, you mean you're going to make it so I can't go to school just because I haven't saved my portion? And we said, exactly. And it caused her to think. And then so she went through. So over Christmas, she had 2 different jobs. She worked really hard, and she made enough money for it.
Yeah.
So again, you want to help your kids, but you want to teach them that there are certain rules that they need to follow.
That they need to help earn, not
Right.
just give it to them.
That's right. And so again, with using the matching principle, it helped us too. I had one daughter came to us and said, hey, I want to go to the Seattle Art Institute. And we thought, hey, that sounds really cool.
She was liked photography a lot.
Photography. And I says, well, what's it going to cost for 4 years? And so she came back and said, well, room and board and books, it's going to cost about $250,000. And I says, well, just for your information, we've saved X. So $250,000 minus X is exactly what you're going to have to come up with. And we said, you know, you might want to check into BYU's program because they have a really good photography. Then I asked her one more question. I says, what's the going salary once they get out? And they said, after that average salary is $40,000 a year. So he says, well, why don't you check at BYU? And so she went to BYU, and because we taught there, we get half tuition. She says, well, it would be about $40,000. And I says, well, what's the average salary of graduates going out? And she says, well, $65,000 to $70,000. And I says, well, this is how much we've got saved, and you could probably do it and not be in debt.
Yeah, graduate debt-free.
And so she
went to BYU.
She went to BYU.
And she has a really good job now. She's a photographer for Salt Lake Real soccer team,
Yeah.
travels all over, and
She's amazing.
is doing really good.
So, again, come up with a plan. Come up with a thought.